Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. This is going to be a little on the dark side of pool video because I'm going to talk about one of my mentors that made a big difference in my life looking back. But I wouldn't have dreamed that that was the case at the time. And that mentor was Rick Thompson. Now, the first time I saw Rick Thompson was in Columbia, Missouri at the Columbia Billiard Center. I spent a lot of time there and got to be friends with a lot of the locals, like Craig Bickford, who passed away last year and was a good friend of mine, and Donnie and Keith and BJ the mailman, and Kelly was a girlfriend of mine back then who ended up working with the Department of Defense, and Tom Draper, who really was the first one to tell me to go to Columbia when I played him in Kirksville, Missouri at a place called Lucky Lanes. No, actually that was Leisure World. There was two bowling alleys that had pool tables in Kirksville, Missouri. One was Leisure World and one was Lucky Lanes. I played at both of them quite a bit. I played more foosball at Lucky Lanes, but Leisure World was a cool place. Had a roller rink and bowling alley, lots of pool tables, lots of cute girls back then. It was my high school years. So Kirksville, Missouri was a college town of over 20,000 people. So compared to Green City that I grew up in, which had 629 people. I think they included all the dogs and cats in the population just to beef it up a little bit. We didn't have any stoplights. We had stop signs, but stoplights were a little too high tech for Green City back then. I don't know, they may have one by now, but I'm not sure. So, first time I saw Rick was in Columbia, Missouri. He had like a Gilligan's hat on. Kind of a homely guy, but funny, super dry sense of humor. When I saw him, he wasn't wearing any shoes. He was playing Barefoot, which was, some people called him Barefoot Rick, but he had a few nicknames. But when we first played, he was quite a bit better than me, and he would give me the last four playing 9-ball, which means I would win on any of the last 4 balls on the table. So that didn't last a long time. That was when I was 16, and he was just more seasoned, and I was just then starting to break through and really learn how to play 9-ball, because I grew up playing 8-ball and 15-ball rotation and didn't really understand the safety elements and some of the other things that you had to learn playing 9-ball. Of course, back then we played 2 foul, not 1 foul, so it was a much more strategic game, and there was no kicking. People would make fun of you if you wanted to play 1 foul. They'd say, "I'm not going to kick it, my money." I just heard somebody say that the other night and brought back memories, because they'd make fun of people or players that wanted to play the rules that they're playing these days, which is ironic, I think, and needs to be changed sometime soon. That's why, I'm saving the Shooter Dare promotion until a couple other things happen first. But Rick and I became friends and started traveling together, and we decided to go down to Dallas, Texas. And I had a car, and we piled in and drove all the way down to Dallas, Texas. Well, as we were entering the city, I know that area now. It's a bad area, but we didn't know at the time. It was around Harry Hines and I-35. And we pulled over there at a gas station. So Rick went in the gas station, and I was outside. Well, this man came up to me and flashed a badge and said that he's a police officer and wanted to see my driver's license. Well, I was 16, and he looks at my license and says, "You have to be 17 in the state of Texas to drive if you're from out of state," which I didn't believe that, but this was kind of a serious situation, and I could tell the man was probably on some kind of drugs. I could tell by his eyes. I'd been around enough to to recognize that kind of stuff. And right then, Rick comes back from the store, walking across the parking lot. And he says, what's it? What's the problem? What's going on? This guy looked at Rick and said, this kid is too young to be driving in the state of Texas. He's out of state. He's only 16. You need to be 17. Now, Rick knew that was not true as well, but he was a lot more seasoned than I was, and he could sense the danger. So he said, okay, officer, is there anything we can do to resolve this? Like, is there a fine that we could pay right now? And it would take care of it? So the guy said, yeah, it's an $80 fine. And I still remember he took like a piece of scrap paper and wrote like a receipt for $80 on this scrap paper, gave it to us. We gave him the $80 and he let us go. But one thing I didn't tell you was the guy had handcuffs. So that's the one thing that kind of spooked me at the beginning was I could see that he had those handcuffs and he was going to handcuff me and take me to jail is what he was indicating. So that was my first brush with the big city, Dallas, Texas. And man, I saw my share of things when I was a teenager that got me streetwise very quick. As a matter of fact, Rick and I went to some other places that night, but the next day we went into the main action spot, which was Rusty's on Northwest Highway. It was right beside Baby Dolls and 3 other strip clubs. It was in the same building as Baby Dolls. So there's lots of strippers, lots of drugs, lots of gambling, lots of all kinds of stuff going on. 3-card Monte, they were shooting dice in the pool room, playing gin and poker. And so it was the next afternoon that Rick took me there, and he didn't want us, people to know that we were in together. So he sent me in by myself. I still remember walking into Rusty's. It was a small place, but it had like, I think 3 or 4 big tables up by the bar, which was straight ahead. They had some bar tables. They had a lot of chairs, tables and chairs. I say a lot, probably about 5 that they played anything from backgammon to poker to 3-card Monte to who knows, anything that you could gamble on, they would play. And there was some of the greatest hustlers there the world's ever seen, like Jack Cooney, for instance, was hanging out there quite a bit. And then, Baltimore Danny and Little Al, John Hager Sr. was one of them that was around there. Sammy Jones would come in once in a while, who was also from the Texas area, I believe. But it was quite the place. So I go in for the first time, and there's nobody there at all. So I walked straight ahead, and the bar was clear across that side of the room pretty much, and then on the other side there was a couple bathrooms. So people would sit like with their back towards the door. Well, there wasn't anybody behind the bar either. So I go up, just walking up to the bar, kind of confused about, who's running the show here? And right then, up pops the head of a bartender about in the center of the bar. And I hear something and look over, and there's a girl on the far left side of the bar that pops up. She pops up, and she's like got her little mirror out and doing her lipstick. And I don't know why her lipstick would have been messed up, but whatever they were doing, it caught me by surprise. Now, I wasn't too naive when I was 16, so I kind of put it together what they were doing. So I ordered a beer, of course, and he gave me one, of course, without even IDing me. And I did have a fake ID. At that time in Texas, you only had to be 19 to drink. So, it wasn't such a big deal, but I had a driver's license that said I was 21 at that time. And so I had my beer and, stayed there for a little while, went back and went with Rick to a couple other spots. That night we went into another bar where a bunch of bookmakers would hang out. So I remember we had like $800 to our name between the two of us, and I think it was pretty much all my money. But so we go in this bar. I go up to the table. Two guys they're gambling on that table, and I put up my quarter. Back then, that's how you challenge the table. So one of the guys came over to me and said, "Listen, we're playing for $500 a game." And I was like, $500? And they said, "Yeah, we're playing. This is 8-ball for $500 a game." So I go back to Rick, and I said, "Man, they're playing for $500 a game." He says, "You're kidding me." He says, "Well, we got one barrel." And I was like, "Man, I just can't do it. We're too far from home." We were like, 1,500 miles away from home or whatever. And I didn't want to lose that game and only have like 300 or less than 300, because it's hard to operate on that kind of money when you're out hustling pool. So I didn't play. Come to find out later, one of those players was called Torpedo. They called him Torpedo Max, who was a big gambler from there in Dallas. Still plays to this day. I see him and another guy, Tommy Ray. They've been playing and gambling around Dallas since before I was 16. So that was a long time ago, in the early 80s. So Dallas was quite the spot. I got my seasoning there at that Rusty's, and at the time I couldn't beat the best players. Like Little Al gave me the 7-ball, and I could beat him with the 7-ball. After I stayed there for a while, by the time I was about 19, I could beat all those players, but they were still tough. The Lizard was around there, and like I said, Baltimore Danny and John Hager, and who was some of those? Erman Bullard would come over from Fort Worth, and Ted Copeland. But Dallas was quite an action spot back then, and we had a lot of fun gambling, especially when Rick and I went down there. I remember one of the craziest things that ever happened was Rick and I was in Oklahoma, and we played like a long set. I remember I played like 12 straight hours to win some money, and we go back to the hotel. We get this old hotel, and it was one of those that you had a chain where you'd put the one end of the chain in a hole and push it over, and the chain would lock the door. It wasn't real sturdy. Anybody could break that chain probably. But I was the last one to go to sleep, so I actually went out to a soda machine, I remember, and came back, and I closed the door and I put that chain on it. I remember I had some trouble putting it on, but I had been playing for a long time, and I was just like in another zone. So the next morning we wake up, and Rick's going to go out and get something to drink. He goes up there and tries to open the door, and he couldn't get the chain off. He's like, "Man, how did you get this chain on there?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "You just put it through the hole and latch it." He looks at it, he says, "You put the big end in the hole." He said, "It won't even fit." So I got up and looked at it, and sure enough, to this very day, I have no earthly idea how I did that. But there's a big end and a little end, and you put it's a little round thing. You put it in the hole, slide it over, and that's what locks the door. Well, I had put the big end in that hole, and it wouldn't fit. So we both tried with no avail to get that chain off. And the only way we get out the door is we had to break the chain. So we opened the door and just broke the chain to get out. But I've had some unusual things happen, and that's one of the ones that I still have never figured out what happened there. Sometimes when you play pool and you get into that zone and you go out into the world, some wild things will happen. I remember at Cracker Barrel one time, they've got this game where you put these pegs in. You've probably seen it at Cracker Barrel. And the hardest thing to do is you jump them kind of like checkers, is to leave the last peg in the hole that was empty to start with. And I remember in Corbin, Kentucky, again, I'd been up gambling and got in that zone, and friend of mine and I went to Cracker Barrel, and he asked me if I'd ever done it, and I hadn't. So I said, let me see that. So that doesn't look that hard. And I did that the first time and left the last peg in the hole that I started out blank or empty. So I don't know how that works. I just know that the human mind is powerful, and when you learn how to get into that zone, you can do some amazing things on the pool table and everywhere else. If you want to know more about my techniques, fundamentals, and systems, both mental and physical, that I use to become the ESPN World Champion and being, voted one of the best money players of the 20th century with Efren and Earl, that was an honor for me from Billiard Digest. So join me at masteringpocketbilliards.com if you want to join my private site. We're going to be upgrading that site and have a lot of new material on it very soon, within 3 weeks. So anyway, this is CJ. Till next time, I'll talk with you soon.